during the 80s, it was a particularly desperate time. If you looked different, you know, you got picked on, you got bullied, you got beaten up. The Mermaid was a nice release. It was also a place where you went with like-minded people.
It's a dirty, shitty pub, and that's what you perform in, really. You'd think, well, I'll probably get a lifetime of this.
For me, I think it was the start of something. Birmingham was always known for that sort of music, that hard music.
The 1980s was obviously dominated by Thatcherism. That bleakness sat alongside an existential threat. People were genuinely terrified of nuclear war. So that's kind of a fascinating psychological space from which to create music, right? So it's not surprising, I guess, considering that these subcultures were characterised by anger and rebellion and transgressive lyrics and artwork.
The inner cities were decayed. It wasn't a very particularly pleasant place to live. No one had any money. You were either a student, you were at school, you were on the dole. So the Mermaid was always a place where we felt safe. But primarily, I mean, let's be honest, it was about going and listening to some fantastic bands and getting drunk, effectively.
The Mermaid was so free in that way. It was a really, I mean, it's crazy because it's a punk rock venue ultimately, and it wouldn't have existed without the culture of punk rock.
The audiences at the Mermaid varied, and I think that's the thing is to remember is that Darren Russell, the music that he promoted generally was from the kind of anarcho-punk genre. However, other people promoted concerts as well at the same time. The Sea Urchins played there, Primal Scream played there.
First went to the Mermaid in either 86 or 87, I think. It was one of the few small music venues in Birmingham at the time. I used to go when there'd be an American band on. I was really into American hardcore. So first band I ever saw there was Larm and Hybel. It seemed incredible. There was probably about 50 people there, but everyone was just stage diving and backflipping and just going mental. Literally bits of plaster and flakes of paint were raining down on the crowd. And those old car alarms were going off all down the road.
Oh God, it's absolutely hideous environment. I mean, I think I had to be drunk to actually even walk into the environment, you know what I mean? Because everyone was pretty much loaded. See like wrecked looking 19-year-olds walking out of venues looking, you know, be like, oh, well, you know, they could barely walk, you're like, I want to be that, you know what I mean? That's I aspire to be that sort of character, you know, extreme punk rock character, you know.
There were a lot of crusty bands. Napalm Death were there constantly. Every time I went, I think Napalm Death. So I said they were the house band, and that they were literally on every week.
We started playing at the Mermaid in 1985. We had played the last gig of our final early era at the Mermaid in 1984 as a benefit for the miners' strike that was taking place in the UK at the time. Then Justin Broderick joined Napalm Death.
We were like the resident band at the Mermaid at that period. I guess my whole career, of which I've had from music, is thanks to being in Napalm Death at that point in 85, 86.
I think on a purely musical level, playing so regularly at the Mermaid did allow us to really tighten, refine and give some degree of power to the sound of our band.
We were like a band that people would laugh at because we were so young and we could barely play and it was quite dishevelled and it was quite shit. Then we eventually became just more and more slightly noticed.
They were just phenomenal. I remember the first time I saw them, it was just like, oh, how can you play so fast? Like, you know, it did not compute. You're like, what's going on?
Something I interviewed described first seeing a grindcore band as like watching a man barking like a dog on stage. I suppose grindcore is characterised as being as loud as possible and as fast as possible and very politically charged.
All my formative years in music were performing at the Mermaid. I mean, literally from the ages of 14 until 16, which were like decades to me. If that venue didn't exist, would it have been another venue? There was no other venue like that where you could literally take the place over.
You know, you heard everything was word of mouth. There was a flyer and it said final gig and everyone was like, oh my God, it's closing.
I've heard different stories about why it came to an end. Some people say it just kind of naturally fizzled out.
No one seems to know exactly why the Mermaid did close down or why the gig stopped. It was just, we started to see flyers for city centre venues where Daz Russell was putting on gigs in the city centre.
It seemed like the Mermaid and the punk rock shows were on the way out, even by the time that Napalm Death was, with me, was winding up. That period, it sort of fizzled out. We were barely going there, and next thing you know, it was done.
I certainly see the influence of the Mermaid as being a chapter in heavy metal music history. The enthusiasm and love for the space is testament to how important like a physical place is to subcultures. Like people need a place to gather. It was a melting pot of different subcultures, the Mermaid, so let's remember it.